Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Steady English Stories. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture yourself standing in a grand room in Vienna in the year 1770. Candles are burning. Rich men and women in silk are whispering. In front of you sits a strange wooden figure. It is life-size. It wears a turban and a long robe, like a wise man from the Ottoman Empire. In one hand, it holds a smoking pipe. In front of it is a chessboard. You watch as a nobleman sits down to play chess against this wooden man. The wooden man lifts his arm. He moves a piece. Slowly, carefully, he starts to win the game. How is this possible? How can a machine built only from wood and gears think? How can it plan and trick and win? For almost 90 years, people all over the world asked this same question. Kings asked it. Generals asked it. Even one of the most powerful men in history, Napoleon Bonaparte, sat down to play against this machine, and he lost. But here is the real mystery, my friends, the one we are going to solve together today. Was this machine really thinking at all? Or was something else hidden inside it, something the whole world could not see? Before we go further, my friends, if you are enjoying this journey into history, press that subscribe button now. It costs nothing, and it helps more English learners like you find these stories. Now, let's go back to where it all began. Our story starts with a man named Wolfgang von Kempelen. He was born in 1734 in a city called Pressburg. Today, we call this city Bratislava. It is the capital of Slovakia. Back then, it belonged to a large empire ruled by the Habsburg family of Austria. Kempelen was not a poor boy from the streets. He was clever and educated. He worked for the royal court, first as a young clerk, then rising to become a trusted advisor. A clerk, my friends, is someone who manages letters and papers for important people. Kempelen was good with his hands and good with his mind. He loved machines. He loved puzzles. He would later spend 20 years of his life trying to build a machine that could speak like a human. A strange and difficult dream for that time. But in 1769, something happened that changed the direction of his life. Kempelen was invited to a magic show at the royal court, in front of the empress herself. Her name was Maria Theresa. She was one of the most powerful rulers in Europe. That night, a French magician performed tricks for her. Cards, illusions, simple magic, meant to impress. Kempelen was not impressed. He turned to the empress and said something bold. He told her, in simple words, that he could build something far more amazing than anything a magician could do with a deck of cards. He promised her a real wonder, a machine unlike any the world had ever seen. What do you think the empress said? She was curious. She gave Kempelen time away from his court duties so he could build this wonder. And Kempelen went to work. 6 months, my friends. In just 6 months, Kempelen built his machine. And when he brought it back to the palace in 1770, nobody in that room had ever seen anything like it. This was the Turk. The Turk sat behind a wooden cabinet, about the size of a large desk. On top of the cabinet was a chair. Before every performance, Kempelen would do something. He would open the cabinet doors, one by one, in front of the audience. Inside, everyone could see gears, rods, and wheels, the brain of the machine, or so it seemed. Kempelen would even hold a candle close, so people could look deep inside and see there was nothing else hidden there. Empty space. just machinery. Then he would close the doors. He would wind up the machine like a clock, and the Turk would come alive. It would lift its wooden arm. It would pick up a chess piece with wooden fingers, and it would really play against a real human opponent. Not simple, random moves. Real chess. Winning chess. The Empress was amazed. The nobles were amazed. Word of this incredible machine spread across Vienna and then across Europe. People began to ask the question that would follow the Turk for the next 80 years. How does it work? Some people had theories. Perhaps it used hidden magnets. Perhaps invisible strings controlled its arm. One person even guessed that a small child was hiding somewhere inside, folded up like a doll in a box. Chess masters, scientists, and curious minds all tried to solve the mystery, and almost all of them failed. Kempelen never gave a clear answer. He only smiled and let the mystery grow. And here is the question I want to leave you with, my friends. Before we continue this story, if there truly was nothing but gears and wood inside that cabinet, then who or what was really moving those chess pieces? The truth, my friends, was far more human than magic. And to understand it, we must follow the Turk on its journey across Europe. After that first performance for Empress Maria Theresa, Kempelen kept the Turk mostly hidden away for over a decade. He was busy with his other work at court, but in 1783 he took the machine on the road. His first stop was Paris. In Paris, the Turk sat inside a famous coffee house called the Café de la Régence, a place where the best chess players in Europe gathered. And there, the wooden man in the turban played against one of the most respected minds of the age, Benjamin Franklin, the American statesman. Franklin lost. Crowds gasped. News of the machine spread across the city like fire through dry grass. From Paris, the Turk traveled to London, then 2 cities across Germany and the Netherlands. Everywhere it went, people paid good money just to watch it play, and almost everywhere it won. Even Catherine the Great, the powerful Empress of Russia, sat down to test her skill against it. So how did a wooden man made only of gears manage to outthink kings, statesmen, and empresses? Here is the truth, my friends. Hidden inside that cabinet, behind the gears and rods that Kempelen proudly showed the crowd, there was a secret compartment. And inside that compartment, folded into a small space, sat a real person, a skilled chess master. As Kempelen opened each door to prove the machine was empty, this hidden player would quietly slide along a rail, moving from one side of the cabinet to the other, always staying just out of view. Clever, isn't it? The audience thought they were checking every corner. In truth, they were being led around a hiding man like actors in a play. Once the doors were closed, this hidden master watched the chess game through a clever system connected to small magnets under the board above. He used levers and gears to move the wooden arm above his head, guiding it to lift each piece and set it down. A dim candle gave him just enough light. It was cramped, it was hot, and it demanded total concentration for hours at a time. But it worked. And here is something remarkable. Many chess masters of that era are believed to have taken a turn inside that cabinet. It seems the secret was not entirely hidden from everyone. Among chess players themselves, it may have been something close to an open secret, a trick they chose not to expose. The way a magician does not reveal another magician's tricks. Kempelen died in 1804 at the age of 70. For a while, the Turk sat silent, packed away and forgotten. But in 1805, a new owner bought the machine, a Bavarian engineer and showman named Johann Nepomuk Mälzel. Mälzel repaired the aging Turk, polished its worn wood, and gave it a second life. And it was under Mälzel's ownership that the Turk faced its most famous opponent of all. The year was 1809. Napoleon Bonaparte, the Emperor of France, had just defeated the Austrian army at the Battle of Wagram. His troops now occupied Vienna itself. Napoleon moved into the grand Schönbrunn palace, the very palace where the Austrian emperor once lived. And there, surrounded by generals and courtiers, Napoleon asked to play a game of chess against the famous automaton he had heard so much about. Picture the scene, my friends. The most feared military commander in Europe, sitting down across from a wooden man in a turban. Napoleon, it is said, tried to test the machine. At one point, he deliberately made an illegal move just to see what would happen. The Turk, or rather, the hidden master inside, noticed immediately. It picked up Napoleon's piece and placed it firmly back where it belonged. Napoleon tried again. Again, the Turk corrected him. On the third attempt, the automaton is said to have swept all the pieces off the board entirely, refusing to continue until Napoleon played fairly. Napoleon laughed, and then he lost the game. Twice. Word of this defeat spread across Europe within weeks. A machine had humiliated the man who had conquered nearly an entire continent. Prince Eugene de Beauharnais, Napoleon's own stepson, was so fascinated that he later paid an enormous sum of money, 30,000 francs, just to own the Turk for a time. Even he could never uncover its secret. This, my friends, was the peak of the Turk's fame. It had beaten emperors. It had crossed oceans of gossip and wonder. It seemed, for a moment, unstoppable, but fame this large is heavy to carry. And behind the curtain, real human beings were paying a real price for the illusion, cramped in the dark for hours, breathing warm, stale air, risking their health to keep a secret alive. Mälzel took the Turk even further from home, eventually sailing it across the Atlantic Ocean to America, chasing new crowds and new profits. What Mälzel could not know, as his ship carried the Turk toward its greatest test yet, was how much this constant traveling would soon cost him, and how close the whole secret was about to come to unraveling forever. Mälzel sailed on, chasing new audiences with the Turk across the ocean. In 1826, he arrived in America, and the Turk delighted crowds in New York and Boston before settling into Philadelphia. It even lost, on occasion, once to a clever woman named Mrs. Fisher, and once to an elderly statesman named Charles Carroll, one of the last living men who had signed the Declaration of Independence. But these small losses only made the machine feel more human, more real. Still, cracks were beginning to show. Over the years, the Turk had been exhibited so many times, in so many cities, that its mystery began to wear thin. Copycat machines appeared. A sharp young writer named Edgar Allan Poe watched the Turk perform, studied it closely, and published a famous essay, guessing quite accurately at how the trick might work. Curious minds in London had already tried the same thing years earlier, publishing careful diagrams and theories. though even the best of these guesses never fully proved the truth. Then, in 1838, disaster struck. Mälzel was sailing back to the United States from Havana, in Cuba, when he became seriously ill and died at sea. The great showman who had carried the Turk across 2 continents was gone, and without him, the machine's story might easily have ended there too, forgotten in a warehouse, its secret buried with its owner. But it did not end there. A Philadelphia doctor named John Kersley Mitchell heard that the famous automaton was sitting in storage, damaged and in pieces, seized to help pay off Mälzel's debts. Mitchell was fascinated by it. Along with a small group of investors, he bought the broken machine and carefully put it back together. For a while, the Turk played again, this time in the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. But its glory days were behind it. Eventually, it was placed in a building called the Chinese Museum, and there it sat, mostly quiet, mostly forgotten, a wonder that the world had simply moved past. What do you think happens to a wonder once the world stops looking at it? On the night of July 5, 1854, a fire broke out at a theater next to the Chinese Museum. The flames spread fast through the wooden building, and by the time anyone could act, the museum itself was burning. Dr. Mitchell's own son, a young man named Silas, rushed toward the fire, hoping to save the automaton his father loved. He arrived too late. The Turk, 85 years old by then, was destroyed completely, along with thousands of other objects inside the museum. Silas later said he believed he heard the machine's arms jerk and flail inside the flames, like a final struggle. Whether that was true or only grief speaking, we cannot know. But here is where the story finds its true ending, my friends. Because the Turk was gone, Silas Mitchell felt there was finally no reason left to protect its secret. In 1857, he published a full, detailed account of exactly how the machine had worked: the hidden compartment, the sliding chair, the levers, the candlelight. The skilled chess masters who had spent decades folded inside a wooden box. After 84 years of wonder and guessing, the mystery was finally completely solved. So what do we learn from the Turk, my friends? The Turk was never a thinking machine. It was never truly artificial intelligence, not in the way people imagined. It was something both simpler and, in a way, more remarkable: real human skill, hidden behind a clever design, made to look like something it was not. For 84 years, brilliant chess players folded themselves into darkness so that a wooden man could take the credit for their genius. There is a quiet lesson in that, isn't there? So often in life, we see only the finished performance, the smooth, confident result, and we never see the hours of hidden effort behind it. The Turk looked effortless. It was not. Somebody, always, was working hard in the dark, and that, my friends, brings us to you. When you listen to English, and it starts to feel smooth and natural and almost automatic, remember that ease is never really automatic either. It comes from hidden effort. It comes from you quietly practicing again and again, even on days when nobody is watching and nobody is clapping. Every person who speaks English fluently once sat just like that hidden chess master, working hard behind the scenes before anyone ever saw the result. So keep practicing, my friends. Keep listening. The fluency will come, even if right now it feels hidden, far away, folded up in the dark like that chess master in his box. One day It will simply move, smooth, confident, automatic, and no one will ever have to know how much quiet work it took to get there before you go. My friends, I have a small favor to ask. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, so more stories like this one can find you. And I would love to know, of everything in this story, what surprised you the most. Was it Napoleon losing to a wooden man? Or was it the person hidden inside all along? Tell me in the comments below. Until next time, my friends, keep learning.